Right, let's do it. So, I hate to disappoint, but I'm going to cut it a little short. A couple of guys walked over to me and they were like, if you went an extra 10 minutes, you would hit that inspirational sweet spot. And Mayor Rosenthal's right there. It would just send us just over the cliff, straight to flying the Shama world. And we would just, from then on, learn a daven and I was like, I really can't. It's a tough week. I have everyone here is still some lingering laryngitis. And we could have just spoke for a long time. And I'm going to have to cut it short a little bit. But it goes like this. Some of this I mentioned when some guys were at my house Friday night. But it's an ongoing lesson and it's important. We're working on Haragadas. Some of you work pretty hard. Some of you work medium hard. And some of you work super hard. And so these parshas, so everyone asked me, what if I can't find the Vart in Haggadah? Where do I go? Where do I go with the parshas Svarim? So I said, it's pretty easy. It's all these parshas. If you find any Dvar Torah mostly, and someone actually dug out the one that, there was a pasuk not, and they found it, and I was like, no, you can't do that. But if you find a Dvar Torah in Shemais, Va'era, Bai, B'Shalach, we can stick it into the Haggadah. So what's going on? Why are there so many parshas? Basically, the Jews were in Mitzrayim. Hashem's got the steering wheel, and if he wants, he can just turn Parai off. He can give him a, ultra. He could say, abacadabra. What do they say? No, it was the Harry Potter spell.
Dumbledore.
No, and he can freeze Parai's bones, and the Jews could just walk out. And instead, we have this elongated the Jews, for themselves, they think they're going out, and then they're not. They are, they're not. They are, they're not. And there's a total of 10 makkos where Parai says yes, then he says no, then he says yes, then he says no. Please, if you have control, then you shouldn't be back and forth so much. Just put Parai in a corner, and Hashem walk over and say, hey, Parai, Jews are going. Parai will say, yes, sir. So what is it with this whole presentation? So the Sfarim tell us something interesting, that this Parai got himself into a bad corner, that it was his fault, like we'll discuss in a minute, that he was going to show the world how we jumpstart Klal Yisrael. And there's one thing that splits into a few parts that you got to know in order for Jews to be Jews. And it goes like this. Until the first Beis HaMikdash sometime, there was a lust, there was a pull to do Avodah Zarah. Just same like people could have a pull for other Averas today, you could have a McDonald's, I don't know, something, and it's smelling and it's on the table, and be like, hey, I wish I could eat that. So in those days, people had a drive to do Avodah Zarah. And there's a whole story in the Gemara that it's an Sanhedrin, that Chazal got rid of it. But the question is, how do we understand that? Avodah Zarah means you make a mistake in your brain. That means that you believe that this instead of this. You can't want that. Either you think it or you don't. How could you want that? Well, right, so what is it? Again, we don't get it anymore, but what? Okay, so I think we can comprehend it a little bit, even though we don't have it. And it means like this. When there's not like this, if anyone who ever read, here and there, everyone ran into some Greek mythology. I don't know if they're all much to read, but you've run into it, and there's 20 gods. Gods are basically like people. They're a little stronger than most people are, and when they sneeze, it turns into Niagara Falls, and then they're all cheating on each other, and then they get mad, and then one guy becomes not a god, and they're all basically fights. And what you do is, if you serve these gods, or any other, is you go up to the god of fire, and you say, hey, look, I'm having some problem with the god of ice cream, and I haven't had ice cream in months. And the god of fire says, wow, I'm going to show him. And he goes over to the god of ice cream and says, I'm going to release my lightning bolts and melt all your ice cream. And the god of ice cream goes scampering away crying, and he gives you tons of mint chocolate chip, whatever it might be, Java nut, that I don't want to embarrass anyone, that you love. So therefore, you have like a little room there to deal with these gods. You could play politics. Really, if they're not all in charge, then if you know how to play the game, you're in charge. Not only that, if they really don't answer you for a couple weeks, you'd be like, listen here, God, you're off the mantelpiece in the garage. And you drop him off in the garage. Now, I don't know if he gives you a stomachache for 2 weeks then or something, but he can't get out of that garage unless you take him out. So if there's a lot of gods, and they all have different powers, I don't know who makes up their rules. It always confuses me. They're just strong. Yeah, but if someone's making up, right, so if someone's making up their rules, then who is but whatever it is, then the person in charge is you. So people want that, especially when people are more intellectual, and they wanted to serve, but they want it on their terms. If there's one God, and He is God at all.
You can't serve and have it on your own terms. You have to follow the rules.
Well, they did kind of, there were deals there, right? But they played around with it. If there's one God, He's got everything. He's omnipotent. He's omnipresent. I know. Omni, a bunch of stuff. I don't even know what else, right? So there's nowhere to go. The deal is like this. He's in charge, and you listen. Especially with an intellectual guy, it's hard to swallow. I can't do, well, what if you, anything? Well, if you, I'm gonna what? So it doesn't get anywhere. You're stuck, which is awesome. But it takes a certain amount of subjugation. So when Moshe came to Parai said the words that opened the floodgates of allowing him to be the poster child. And what he said was the worst thing you could ever say. He said, okay, so you think Hashem is going to get the Jews out? Well, who is Hashem? What does that mean? That means, let's see, I got a lot of gold in with the God of shoelaces. I did amazing service to the great God of noise canceling headphones. So what do you got? So the answer had to be, to present this was, what do I got? Well, maybe you like water. Maybe you can't have that. Okay, fine. No water. You beat me on the water. Okay, Tzfardeh is a complicated mark, but it has the presence of mind. You like that? Okay, fine. Presence of mind. Okay, you like your comfort? So the answer had to be, and the Makos represent everything in the end of the story, a lot of Mepharshim in the entire world. Oh, I'll turn what I have against you, but that's everything. You have no choice. There's nothing here that you can do. There's no leverage. And that's how the Jews left Mitzrayim. The Jews left Mitzrayim knowing that your job on this world is to figure out what Hashem wants from you, which is important. Because in a way, that's the only reason why you are important. Because you're part of the plan. Hashem set you up. He gave you the right backpack. He gave you the right sneakers. He gave you the right weaknesses. And you're going to have to do that. The minute you be like, what can I do here? The answer is nothing. So when we read through these parashiyos, they are the foundation. They're everything. They're telling us that there's no way out, which is awesome. So Parai is literally like the little twerp that says, when you have a mercy fight, and then he goes like, back one, okay, mercy, back, because there's nowhere to go, which was what Paro didn't believe. So this week's parasha are Makos, the end of the story. There are Makos, Arba, Choshech, Makos, Becharis, which at the end finally Paro gave in. But what that showed was everything. So that's where we live. We live in a world where Hashem set us up, and that's why we are important. And as we read through it, if we keep that in mind, it makes our life valuable, because that really, you're only valuable if you're here for a purpose. And there's a plan, which there could only be if there's one engineer. Have a wonderful Shabbos.